This was a criminal case that once sent shockwaves across America. A pregnant mother and her 2 young daughters mysteriously vanished overnight. After the incident, the police launched a massive search, but were unable to find them. Just when everyone was at a loss, an inconspicuous detail uncovered a horrifying truth. The presiding judge at the time lamented, "I have never seen anything like this before in the thousands of cases I have handled. This is perhaps the most inhumane and vicious crime." So what exactly happened back then? Let's travel back to 2018 and revisit this sensational case. The town of Frederick is an ordinary town in Colorado, USA. It was originally a coal mining town, attracting many immigrants. But after the mines closed in 1928, the town gradually declined, only showing signs of recovery in recent years. According to the 2020 census, the town's population was 14,513, an increase of 67.22% since 2010. And the first time this quiet, ordinary town became widely known is because of the story we are telling today. The protagonist, Shanann, had a loving husband and 2 adorable daughters. With a successful career and family, she was the envy of many. In the early morning of August 13, 2018, Shanann, who was 15 weeks pregnant, had just returned from a business trip. Her best friend, Nicole, dropped her off at home. Before leaving, she reminded her, "Don't forget your OB/GYN appointment in the morning." But strangely, when morning came, Shanann seemed to have vanished into thin air. She didn't reply to texts, didn't answer her phone, and even missed her scheduled prenatal checkup. At 12:10 p.m., her friend Nicole felt she couldn't wait any longer. Extremely worried, she took her son and rushed to Shanann's house to find her. Their home was located at 2825 Saratoga Trail. It was a spacious 5-bedroom house. When she arrived under the blazing sun, she found Shanann's car parked in the driveway. Logically, she shouldn't have gone far, but strangely, the doors and windows of the house were shut tight. Knocking and calling out yielded no response. She checked the doors and windows, and they were all intact. There were no signs of a break-in. Looking through the windows, she couldn't see Shanann or the 2 children. At this point, something felt very wrong. Puzzled, Nicole immediately called Watts, asking about the whereabouts of the mother and 2 daughters. Watts was Shanann's husband, an operator for Anadarko Petroleum Corporation. He left for work early and came home late every day. He said he didn't know what was going on either. Before he left for work around 5 a.m., his wife and children were still asleep. After hearing that his wife was missing, Watts immediately rushed back home. While waiting for him, Nicole called the police. At 1:40 p.m., a police officer arrived to investigate. Watts also hurried back. He opened the door and invited them inside to look around. The house was empty. Doors and windows were intact, with no signs of forced entry. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The only strange thing was that the bedsheet was missing from the bed. Watts suggested that his wife had probably taken the kids out to play somewhere. He said they might be back soon. But a closer inspection revealed that Shanann's wallet, phone, and daily medications were still there. This was extremely unusual. Who leaves the house without their wallet and phone these days? What's more, Shanann was a brand promoter for a nutrition company. She needed to stay in constant contact with her clients. Barring any special circumstances, her phone was with her 24/7. It seemed something was really wrong. The police shifted their attention to Watts. Before you left for work this morning, they asked, "Did your wife say anything?" Watts stated, "When she got home at 2 a.m., I was sleeping. Because we needed to talk about separating, I woke up at 4 a.m. Then we had an emotional conversation. We've had some friction in our relationship lately, and neither of us has been in a good mood. To blow off some steam, she mentioned taking the kids to a friend's house today. But as for which friend, she didn't say. I left for work around 5:30 a.m. I tried calling my wife during the day, but she didn't answer. At the time, I thought she was still angry, so I didn't think much of it. After that, I don't know what happened. Watts' account seemed plausible. A couple having a conflict. Shanann leaving for a friend's house in a huff and happening to leave her phone behind. It seemed to make sense. The police collected surveillance footage from nearby streets and neighbors' houses, trying to see when Shanann left. However, very strangely, not a single camera captured Shanann or the children. The footage only recorded Watts backing his truck into the garage at 5:27 a.m. and leaving again at 5:45 a.m. Besides that, there was nothing else. This meant that Shanann and the children had never left the house. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. Police asked nearby residents if they had seen Shanann and her daughters. Everyone said they hadn't seen them. As night fell, a day had quietly passed, and there were still no leads. The news of Shanann and her daughters' mysterious disappearance from their home quickly spread through the town. Residents began to gossip, with some even suggesting supernatural involvement. This cast a shadow of unease and fear over the entire town. To avoid causing a panic, the day after the disappearance, the FBI and the Colorado Bureau of Investigation were dispatched. Over a dozen officers arrived at the Watts home, with highly trained police dogs conducting a thorough and detailed search of the property. Unfortunately, the police dogs were unable to track the scent of the mother and her 3 children. Watts was extremely cooperative during the investigation and even gave an interview to a TV station. I've never seen something like this in my lifetime unless it was on TV or a movie, and this doesn't seem real at all. It just seems like I'm living in a nightmare, and I can't get out of it. I just want them home so bad. I was hoping that I would just run over by the kids running in the door and just barrel rushing me. But it didn't happen, and it was just a traumatic night, trying to be here. Shanann Bella Celeste. If you're out there, just come back. If somebody has her, please bring her back. I need to see everybody. I need to see everybody again. This house is not complete without anybody here. Please bring her back. In the interview, Watts pleaded for the safe return of his wife and children. He suspected they had been abducted by criminals and begged the abductors to spare the mother and her 3 children. Listening to Watts's heartbroken plea, everyone sympathized with him. The police also took the case very seriously. They expanded the search area, assigned more personnel, and posted missing person flyers everywhere. Still, there was no progress. This bizarre disappearance case, with media exposure, was no longer confined to the small town. It caused a sensation across the United States, and even worldwide, becoming a hot topic of conversation. Countless people were eagerly waiting for the safe return of Shanann and her children. The pressure on the police was immense. To solve the case as quickly as possible, they decided to first investigate Shanann's personal background. Shanann was born on January 10, 1984, in New Jersey. Her family later moved to North Carolina. She was as beautiful as a doll, her bright eyes always warming people's hearts. Her parents always said she was a gift from God. Unfortunately, fate was not kind to this beautiful girl. At the age of 25, Shanann was diagnosed with lupus, an incurable chronic disease. To make matters worse, in the same year, she was in a serious car accident, which further worsened her condition. Just as she was falling into despair, she met Watts online. They chatted often and quickly became soulmates. You could say it was Watts who led her out of the darkest time of her life. Shanann regained her confidence and bravely fought her illness. Her health gradually improved. On November 3, 2012, the loving couple tied the knot. After getting married, they moved to Frederick, Colorado, and bought a 5-bedroom house. On December 17, 2013, their eldest daughter, Bella, was born. On July 17, 2015, Their second daughter, Celeste, was born. The arrival of their two daughters made Shanann even stronger, and the couple's bond grew deeper. She loved sharing her life online. I'll say hi, everybody. Hi. See? Say hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. No, and he's the best thing that has ever happened to me. Although the family was happy, they were not financially well off. You could even say they were struggling. The couple's combined annual income was $90,000, which wasn't a small amount, but it still wasn't enough to cover their substantial living expenses. They had a $3,000 monthly mortgage and a $600 car payment. They were also burdened with up to $70,000 in credit card debt, student loans, and medical expenses. In July 2014, they were sued for unpaid homeowners association fees. Under immense pressure, on June 5, 2015, the Watts family filed for bankruptcy. At that time, their two bank accounts only had a pitiful $3 and $6 left in them. Despite the huge financial pressure, Shanann's love for Watts remained passionate. In 2017, she posted online, on June 11, 2018, the couple was expecting their third child. Shane was very excited and immediately shared the good news with Watts. Watts was also very happy. They found out it was a boy and named their unborn son Nico. During the investigation, police learned that Shanann was cheerful and kind. Her friends all said she was someone who loved life and loved her family. Therefore, the probability of her taking her children and running away from home was very low. So who could have taken the mother and her three children? And how did they manage to avoid all the surveillance cameras? Police visited Shanann's friends and family, asking if she had shown any unusual behavior recently, and all the interviewees coincidentally mentioned the same thing. Shanann's marriage had recently been in major trouble. In text messages to a friend, Shanann cried that Watts really didn't want the third child. He even said they were no longer compatible, and it was best to separate sooner rather than later. Additionally, Shanann's mother, Sandra, said that, at the beginning, Watts was indeed a good father and husband. Their relationship was great, but recently, Watts seemed like a different person. On June 27th, her daughter took her granddaughters on vacation to North Carolina, but Watts was unwilling to go with them, only joining them 5 weeks later. One night, Shanann was vomiting all night due to her pregnancy, but Watts acted very cold and showed no concern. Sandra found this very strange. He used to be a very considerate and gentle person. She even told the police that she suspected her daughters' and granddaughters' disappearance was Watts's doing. Coincidentally, Watts's change in behavior started right when Shanann left for her vacation. From then on, they spoke very little. Gradually, they stopped talking altogether. Even when they met later, they no longer kissed or hugged. They became the most familiar strangers. Shanann was very anxious about this, constantly telling her friends about her pain, worrying that Watts was seeing another woman. And the truth was exactly as she feared. After investigating Watts's communications, the police discovered he was indeed having an affair. His mistress was his colleague, Nicole Kessinger. Watts had lied, claiming he was already divorced, to deceive Kessinger into a relationship. The police also traced the movements of Watts and his lover Kessinger during Shanann's vacation. July 4th, Watts invited Kessinger to his home, and they were intimate. July 7th, the two were on the phone talking until late at night. July 14th, the two went on a date to the Shelby American Collection Museum and spent the night at a nearby hotel. July 30th, before Watts went to North Carolina to reunite with Shanann, he wrote a love letter to Kessinger. August 4th, Kessinger searched for wedding dresses online. August 7th, Watts and Shanann returned home together from vacation. August 9th, Shanann went to Arizona on a business trip. On the 11th, Watts hired a babysitter. After leaving the kids with the sitter, he went on another date with Kessinger. In fact, the two had been involved for quite some time. Watts's phone contained thousands of photos of Kessinger, including many explicit ones. Although he used software to hide them, the police found them all. Watts juggled between his new love and his old one, a true master of time management. And that's not all. The police also found out he had a one-night stand with another woman. This was around February 2018. On a dating app, he found a woman named Amanda. Later, when police questioned Amanda, she said Watts was very savage and rough in bed. Police suspect Watts had cheated multiple times during his marriage. Various clues indicated he no longer loved his wife. A detective specializing in psychology, after carefully observing Watts's interview footage, 407-00-1_501, 800 to 0 hours, 15 minutes and 3 seconds, 333, pointed out some suspicions. Throughout the entire interview, he appeared very flustered. His eyes darted from side to side, and he frequently crossed his arms over his chest, a classic defensive posture. When mentioning his wife and daughters, he always habitually used the past tense, as if he was certain they would never return. In addition, Shanann's friend Nicole also provided the police with two suspicious details. On the day of the incident, when she wanted to call the police to report Shanann missing, Watts tried to stop her, saying he didn't want the police involved. Secondly, while reviewing the surveillance footage, Watts's behavior was particularly unnatural. Usually calm in character, he suddenly became anxious and restless when he saw the footage of himself backing his truck into the garage. He paced back and forth in front of the monitor with his arms crossed, appearing extremely agitated, as if some dark secret was about to be exposed. These details raised high alarms for the police. The neighbor who provided the surveillance footage also stated that he had never seen Watts back his truck into the garage to load something like that before. This was the only time. It was very abnormal. On the day of the incident, before Nicole called the police, only Watts had entered and exited the house. If he had done something, it was certainly not impossible. August 15th, the third day after the incident, the police brought Watts to the station and began a formal interrogation. In the interrogation room, Watts sat in a chair with his legs crossed. His expression relaxed, calm and composed. So I need to ask you about your marriage and infidelity, okay? Tell me that I have never cheated in my life. And it's like she's always been a trustworthy person. I've always been a trustworthy person. I fully expect if we ever thought about straying another way, that we would tell each other before it happened. Throughout the interrogation, Watts's answers were almost flawless. He firmly denied cheating and stated he had not done anything to harm Shanann. If the police hadn't already gathered some evidence, they might have believed him. An FBI agent specializing in psychological analysis, after repeatedly watching the interrogation video, noticed that when Watts talked about his wife and daughter's disappearance, he would subconsciously touch his neck. Based on this body language, the agent theorized that Watts may have strangled Shanann. During the subsequent polygraph test, he still appeared very calm. Were you involved in the disappearance of Shanann and your children? The examiner asked. No, Watts replied. Do you know where Shanann and the children are? No. Did you have an argument or physical altercation with Shanann? No. No, Watts answered firmly. But the polygraph score said it all. -18, significantly below the deception indicated threshold. When he learned he had failed the polygraph test, he became visibly agitated, his face showing signs of pain and struggle. He finally confessed his crime. I lost it and I choked her.
No, that's strange.
Watts explained through tears that on the morning of the incident, his request for a separation made Shanann very upset. They parted on bad terms. As he went downstairs, he suddenly heard the children's cries. Returning to the bedroom, he allegedly saw Shanann strangling the children. Faced with this scene, he completely lost control. In a fit of rage, he grabbed Shanann's neck until she stopped breathing. Because the garage and house were connected, afterward he backed his truck into the garage, wrapped the bodies of his wife and children in a bed sheet, loaded them into the truck, and drove them to an oil field owned by his company to hide them. This is why Shanann and the children never appeared on any surveillance footage. This story sounded highly implausible. A loving mother, pregnant with her child, personally taking the lives of her two daughters. It was simply absurd. Regardless of the truth, at least Watts admitted to killing Shanann. Using the GPS from the truck, the police found the oil field located 100 kilometers from Shanann's house. They then used a drone to search and photograph the area from above. And sure enough, they found the missing bedsheet from the Watts home. The police showed the drone photos to Watts and had him identify the locations where the bodies were hidden. He marked 3 spots, saying his wife and 2 children were there. Based on this lead, in that desolate oil field, the police found the bodies of Shanann and her 2 children. Shanann was buried in a shallow grave, covered with a bedsheet. The 2 children, however, were stuffed into oil tanks with very small openings. The medical examiner, after examination, determined the cause of death for all 3 was asphyxiation. Shanann had significant bruising on her neck, a fractured hyoid bone, and a nearly 4-centimeter laceration on the inside of her mouth. Her older daughter, Bella, had a noticeable wound on her left buttock. A lock of blonde hair was also found on one of the oil tanks, which was caused by Watts, forcibly stuffing her into the tank. This indicated that Watts's methods of disposing of the bodies were extremely brutal. Officer Tammy, after seeing the tragic state of Shanann and her children, was almost certain that it was Watts who had killed them. If it were truly an act of impulse, he would not have brutally stuffed the 2 poor children into oil tanks. This is not something a father would do. Subsequently, the police charged him with 3 counts of first-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and other crimes. On August 16, 2018, the first hearing in the Watts murder case was held in Weld County, Colorado. The atmosphere in the courtroom was extremely somber. Shanann's father delivered a heartbreaking speech. The judge stated that, due to the severity of the case, and for the safety of the public, Watts would not be allowed bail. Faced with overwhelming evidence and accusations from the victims' families, Watts still refused to plead guilty. He consistently maintained that Shanann had killed the 2 children, and at the second hearing on August 21, 2018, he pleaded not guilty to all charges. To get Watts to plead guilty, Shanann's family stated they would not pursue the death penalty. They had already lost 4 lives, and did not want to see another person die, even if he was a depraved killer. On November 6, 2018, Watts reached a plea agreement with the prosecutor, admitting to the murder of his wife Shanann and his 2 daughters. In exchange, he would be spared the death penalty. Regarding the severity of the case, the presiding judge stated the defendant coldly and deliberately ended 4 lives. This was not an act of impulse, nor was it an accident. It was a calculated, disgusting act. I have never seen anything like this before. In the thousands of cases I have handled, this is perhaps the most inhumane and vicious crime. Ultimately, Watts was sentenced to 5 life sentences without parole, plus 48 years for unlawful termination of pregnancy, and 36 years for 3 counts of tampering with evidence, a total of 84 years. Although he escaped the death penalty, he is destined to never leave prison alive. After learning the verdict, Shanann's father said to Watts, Shanann, Bella, Cece, and Nico were loving and caring people. They loved life. They'd love being around people who love them, but God only knows what happened that night. Life will never be the same without Shanann. Bella and Celeste, Nico, they were taken by a heartless one. This is the heartless one, the evil monster. How dare you take the lives of my daughters, Shanann? Bella, Celeste, and Nico. I trusted you to take care of them, not kill them. And they also trusted you, the heartless monster, and then you take them out like trash. You disgust me. Let me tell you something. I will think of them every day of my life, and I love them every day of my life. Prison is too good for you. This is hard to say, but may God have mercy on your soul. I hope you enjoy your new life. It's nothing like the one you had out here. May the courts have no mercy on you. As for the motive, because Watts refused to disclose it, we can never know for sure. However, based on the clues found, it is speculated that he did it to escape his family and be with his lover, to live a carefree life. It was thought that with the trial over, this case would slowly fade from the public eye. But unexpectedly, in September 2019, a book titled Letters from Christopher, The Tragic Confessions of the Watts Family Murders, once again brought some buried truths to the public's attention. The author of the book is Cheryl Cadle. Through correspondence with Watts, she collected letters he wrote to her from prison and compiled them into a book. In the letters, Watts revealed some case details that even the police did not know. His actions were, in fact, premeditated and extremely heinous. The truth revealed in the letters is this. On the morning of August 13th, before discussing the separation with Shanann, he first went to the girls' room and attempted to smother them with pillows. Later, the two girls miraculously woke up. At that time, he was in a heated argument with Shanann, and he strangled his wife until she was suffocated. The awakened girls asked, "Daddy, what happened?" Watts replied, "Mommy is sick." He then put them in the truck with her and drove to the oil field. At that time, Shanann's body was at the two children's feet. The poor things were too young. They didn't know their mother was already gone, and that their turn was next. After arriving at the oil field, Watts smothered his younger daughter, Celeste. And all of this was witnessed by his older daughter, Bella. Bella cried and asked, "Daddy, is the same thing going to happen to me?" Watts didn't answer. He then brutally murdered his older daughter. The girl's last words were heartbreaking. "Daddy, no." Furthermore, in the letters, he also admitted to trying to poison Shanann, hoping she would miscarry. And his purpose for all of this was to get rid of his family and marry his lover, Kessinger. Reading this, I think many people can't control the anger in their hearts. Just thinking about it is chilling. This also supports the police's speculation about the motive. Failed marriages are increasingly common. If you can't get along, you can just get a divorce. Why choose such an extreme method? Even the most vicious beasts don't kill their own young. This is the darkest side of human nature. Watts's cold-bloodedness and cruelty are terrifying. I wonder, when he saw his daughters' lives fading in his hands, what was going through his mind? In the middle of the night, does he hear the haunting accusations of his wife and daughters? But that doesn't matter anymore. Lonely iron bars and the shackles of the night are his best destiny. The rest of his life will slowly fade away in regret and solitude. This is perhaps the best punishment for him. Unbelievably, while in prison, Watts has received many love letters. Several women have written to him to confess their love, even including their bikini photos. Some say Watts has one of the kindest faces they have ever seen. Some say he is a good person. Some say they are deeply attracted to him, and so on. This is truly puzzling. Actually, such things are not uncommon. In the Scott Peterson case we covered, and the case of Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, they both received numerous love letters from women. Some even got married in prison. The tragedy of the Watts family was later adapted into several film and television works, including the Netflix documentary American Murder at the Family Next Door, which premiered on September 30th, 2020. The documentary uses a large amount of real archival footage to reconstruct the entire process of the case, explaining the deep-seated family crisis hidden beneath the calm surface. That's all for today's story. Please like, share, and subscribe to support us. A simple click of your finger is a great encouragement to me. I'm DarkCaseX, and we'll see you next time.